Donald Fallon brings us through hidden histories each and every week, as I told you, about an episode or a person that you might not know much about, but it's extremely fascinating. And as we know, there has been an explosion in the popularity of craft beers around Ireland in recent years, specialist pubs popping up all over the place and new microbreweries aplenty across the island. Well, one beer from Irish history that you may not have heard of before now is the O'Connell Ale, brewed by Daniel O'Connell Jr. And the O'Connell family and the Guinnesses were far from brewing friends, to say the least, and Donald's going to tell us more. Does this just go down lines of Catholic Protestant?
Some at the time and since would say that it's a little more complex. The Guinness family aren't only a famous brewing family, they played a very important role in public life in Ireland right from the very beginning. Now, of course, we all know about Arthur Guinness, Arthur's Day Guinness, establishing the brewery in 1759. In 1798, a publication very close to the United Irishman, but notoriously unreliable, accused Arthur of being a British spy. And I don't quite believe that. Certainly Arthur had unionist politics, as did his children. Arthur Jr. became very much a unionist political voice in Irish politics, and he was involved in the committee that put up Nelson's Pillar on the subject. Daniel O'Connell stood against Arthur Jr. on several occasions, politically speaking. So there was a political rivalry between the O'Connell and the Guinness families, a very strong one.
Read us your poem here.
A contemporary 19th century newspaper, this is a wonderful one. To be sure you did hear of the heresy beer that was made for to poison the Pope. To praise the brewer a sin is, his name is Art Guinness, for salvation he never can hope.
See, I have heard the phrase Protestant porter before around Dublin. Every once in a while you can hear about that. But was there ever a boycott of Guinness?
This term Protestant porter, it pops up in the 1790s and then kind of throughout the 19th century sporadically. And it's basically a sectarian term labelled against Guinness. In 1812, there's this petition, this famous petition going around Dublin, the Protestant petition, and it's against any concessions to Catholics. Now, likely it comes from reckless corners and it's designed to stir the pot, but the name Guinness is on it. And this rumour spreads throughout Dublin that the Guinness family, the brewing family, have signed this petition against giving any concessions to Catholics. Ironically, Guinness actually supported Catholic emancipation very strongly, but facts don't always get in the way of stories in Dublin. So you had a lot of sectarian tension against Guinness and a lot of attempts to boycott their product.
Now, we've heard how the Guinnesses dabbled in politics, so now we turn to the O'Connells dabbling in brewing.
Well, you know the great joke about Daniel O'Connell that you couldn't throw a stone over a schoolhouse wall without hitting one of his children on the head. You couldn't throw a stone over a wall in 19th century Dublin without hitting a brewery. And the O'Connells open a brewery. In 1831, Daniel O'Connell Jr., son of the Liberator, acquires an old brewery site in James's Street. And if you know Dublin, that is dangerously close to the Guinness brewery. They are on the doorstep of Guinness. And it becomes Daniel O'Connell Jr. and Company. Now, to many contemporaries, this was seen as a smack in the face, a Catholic opponent right on the doorstep of Guinness. The problem was, the stuff was almost undrinkable.
Right.
And contemporary
stout,
accounts,
was it also stout, yeah?
It was an ale, O'Connell Ale. They dabbed at porter, but O'Connell Ale was the big product. Now, Daniel Jr. and his business partners, they knew little about business and seemingly even less about brewing. Daniel Sr. backed his son's endeavours financially. In fairness to Daniel O'Connell, though, he said that when I leave the house and return to my profession, then I will not hesitate to canvass for the interests of my darling child. But he understood as a politician, you kind of had to stay in the sidelines. There was a bit of a propaganda coup, though. Daniel O'Connell Sr., he sampled his son's porter in Kerry in August 1834, and he said that, quote, that is the very best Irish porter I have ever tasted.
But the truth was it was muck, so did it fail?
It was dire. It was absolutely dire, according to the contemporary newspapers. And O'Connell Jr. leaves the firm in 1840 in near financial ruin. But the franchise for brewing the ale, the name is popular, goes to Darcy's Anchor Brewery, another brewery in Dublin, and they make it somehow drinkable. It's easy to see how Arthur Guinness Jr. would have seen this as an attempt by the O'Connell family to gain more influence at his expense. Not only were they brewing, Daniel O'Connell Sr. founded his own bank, the National Bank, with his picture on the banknotes, always the egotist. Mm-hmm. Guinness were among the leading families in the Bank of Ireland. So in all aspects of life, it would have seemed to the Guinness family like the O'Connells were creeping up on them.
Right, but eventually people, I suppose, revert to type. The Guinnesses stick to brewing, the O'Connells stick to politics. Is that where the story ends?
Sadly, it's more complex than we have any time to go over, because the Guinnesses do remain very firmly involved in politics. The O'Connells, so they had the good sense they had the good sense to get out of brewing. O'Connell and Arthur Guinness, both O'Connell Jr. and O'Connell Sr., there was no love there. Daniel O'Connell Sr. referred to him soon after this as the most accomplished hypocrite in all of Irish society. Rivalry was very, very great and popped up on occasion. Daniel O'Connell Jr. doesn't really seem to have blamed Guinness for the demise of his brewery. He preferred to blame the temperance movement, a movement that eventually enrolled almost 3 million Irish people. Ireland sober is Ireland free was not a very popular slogan with distillers and brewers in Irish life. And Daniel Jr., he puts the blame very much on the temperance movement and not the Guinness family.
All right, Donald, thank you very much for bringing us through another episode of Hidden Histories. He is Donald Fallon. First of all, the name of the book?
The Life and Afterlife of the Nelson Pillar.
The name of the blog?
ComeHereToMe.com.
And the tours?
Every Saturday we kick off at 11:30, which is kind of just late enough for people. 11:30 from the Little Museum of Dublin.
But tell us this, Donald. I mean, like, my own, as Lord Sandymount, I have to go through my own history here. And my great-great-great-grandfather was John Jemison. And he
invented the radio and whiskey.
In Bow Street, he married Mary Haig. They both came over from Scotland. When are you going to do Into My Ancestry in Turkey? Actually, it'd be in my book. Did I tell you that, Chris?
You have a book coming out.
Oh, yes, I have a book coming out.
I'm the only one in the room that doesn't have a book. Tell us more about your book.
Well, no, the issue is that the history of whiskey making is it different to the brewing business?
Well, we've done one of the most popular pieces we've done on Hidden Histories in recent months was the fire. The whiskey fire in the Liberties in 1875, but there is a lot more to do there. And interestingly, there's a lot of rivalry between brewing families and distilling families in Dublin.
And then, of course, if you get into my family, Marconi.
Yes, we invented the radio as well.
We invented radio
in his house.
He eloped to Italy. He was also, his mother was Annie Jemison, and I didn't know them personally now, but basically they lived in Fairfield and in Enniscorthy, and they eloped. And they had a little distillery down in Fairfield, and Gueglimo went over and married, and their son was the Marconi that invented radio waves that allow us to perform here today.
I think it's absolutely ironic that Marconi invents radio waves and then his great-great-great-great-great-grandson manages to butcher them every morning.
I'm his nephew.
You're his nephew. Sorry, his nephew manages to butcher the medium so well every morning. Donald Fallon, thank you very much. And the podcasts of all the past Hidden Histories are on the Breakfast Podcast, newstalk.ie/breakfast, or go to iTunes and subscribe, and then I won't have to tell you this every morning.